Hi everybody and welcome to the stream tonight. Now, I had a request a while ago to speak about Planet X, or Nibiru as it's also called, but I didn't have any great material on it. Just turn that slightly. But now I have got lots to say on Planet X, so I thought we would talk about it. So if you haven't heard of it before, it's a new planet that's sort of been discovered on the outskirts of the solar system. But is it that new? Has it so recently been discovered? Well, for astrologers, this is particularly exciting because a new planet brings a new dimension, new possibilities for interpretation. So right now, in astrology, we talk about there being 10 planets and their 12 signs. So that would mean both Taurus and Virgo don't have their own ruling planet. Taurus shares Venus with Libra, and Virgo shares Mercury with Gemini. So technically the sun and the moon are luminaries. They're not planets as such. We just loosely define them as planets. And I know that in astronomical circles, they're no longer calling Pluto, the furthermost planet from the sun, a planet. It's been kind of downgraded. You can see a nice little picture of all the planets there. So I'm interested to know if there is a new planet who it's going to rule, and I think it's highly likely that it will rule Taurus, which we'll go on to discuss. I've always had this feeling that there's something unknown about Taurus, because we all know the traditional qualities you associate with Taurus, being quite a stubborn, determined, but kind of earthy and practical as well, being fairly diplomatic and loving and affectionate and liking their comforts and being quite good with money, maybe a little bit materialistic. We all understand those traits of Taurus, but nowhere in that dynamic is it talked about Taurus and politics. And when you look at politics and the kind of really influential, often in a bad way, people that have shaped our modern society, they are Taurians. For example, Oliver Cromwell as well, if you know your English history, super important figure. We also have Pope John Paul II, the Polish Pope. He had a great influence in the switch from Poland being under the Soviet kind of umbrella to coming into democracy. A lot of people say, though, he worked for the CIA. Obviously, Hitler, Taurus, Vladimir Lenin, Taurus, Karl Marx, Taurus. I mean, God, we're talking about big figures in shaping everything we talk about in modern politics and society. Then you've got people like Tony Blair, who has been incredibly influential in sort of moving the United Kingdom into the New World Order. So, however long he was in power, boy, did he have influence. And a lot of the things he put in terms of legislation are still affecting outcomes in the United Kingdom. We also had people like Catherine the Great, who brought Russia back to make Russia great again, and Catherine de' Medici in France. And there are just so many figures. I think Pol Pot was also one, Kenneth Kaunda in Africa. You can just go on and on. I think the longest serving monarch in Japan, Taurus, our queen, obviously in the UK, Taurus, and David Icke is a Taurus. So look at the kind of influences all these people have had, their longevity and the amount of time they've influenced thinking, politics, and whatever. So I do feel that if there's a new planet discovered and it rules Taurus, it's going to be a planet associated with possibly tyranny, great political change, political influence, and influencing political ideology. So this new planet, obviously going to be very political. So first of all, I should discuss, I'm just going to get up a little page here now. When the other planets, like basically you can see Saturn and Jupiter, but beyond that, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, they kind of had to be discovered. And they always have an impact. So as soon as a new planet is discovered, there tends to be things happening in society that have a lot to do with the themes around that planet. So when Uranus was discovered, which was in the late 1700s, the world was in the throes of a monumental shift with the rise of what we call modern democracy, exemplified by the American and French revolutions. One of the keys to Uranus is liberté, fraternité, equalité. And of course, that was like the French Revolution. After the discovery of Neptune, there was also an upheaval, particularly in Europe, reflected in the riots of the late 1840s, growing concern about the rights of the downtrodden, a movement towards socialism. On either side of Pluto's discovery, it was also the end of the Roaring Twenties, the stock market crash of 1929, worldwide depression, lots of anger among ordinary people around the world about broken economic systems, the Green New Deal coming, the rise of Hitler, and that. So lots of social shifts have been related to the discovery of those planets. So let's look now at technological change, because when Uranus was discovered, the 1700s, there was the rise of mechanization, the Industrial Revolution, assembly line mass production, steam power, early kind of inventions of electricity. When Neptune was discovered, humanity woke up to the potentials of another fuel source, oil. That saw the rise of the Rockefeller power and the Harrimans and all that as well. And also apparently there was the same year Neptune was discovered, a businessman, Samuel M. Keir from Pittsburgh, found oil seeping into his salt well, and he bottled it and sold it as medicine, right? Okay, the years around the discovery of Pluto witnessed the unlocking of the atom bomb, nuclear power, atomic energy, everything to do with that. Let's talk about aviation, another important one. Uranus coincided with the birth of modern aviation, the launch of the first hot air balloon in 1783 by the Montgolfier brothers in France. Around Neptune's discovery, there was the first manned glider, and Henry Giffard built the first airship powered by an aircraft engine. It was unsuccessfully at the start. And the 1900s saw the rapid rise of the rocket. Rocket launched. Jack Parsons and Aleister Crowley's mate with black powder, and the Nazis' work in the early 30s around rocket energy and everything like that. Which of course eventually culminated in space travel. That was all around the discovery of Pluto. Also, I don't know, I should talk about that. Let's talk about archaeology and history. And each of the discoveries of Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto has coincided with a shift in understanding of history. So there have been, for example, there was the uncovering of previously invisible bodies in our solar system, and that synchronized with the corresponding opening up of previously hidden knowledge in human society. So, for example, to make it more clear, Uranus, when Uranus was discovered, James Hutton presented a paper to the Royal Society of Edinburgh arguing that the Earth was far older than originally believed, and ever since our understanding of the Earth, has been pushing beyond all these other boundaries. And as a result of Darwin's, I'm not going to go in, this article talks about Darwin's theory of evolution, but I don't go along with that anyway. But there were new discoveries in archaeology like Galibi Tepe in Turkey and the Gunung Padang in Indonesia, and those have also forced us to rethink about when human society was born and the evolution of this planet. Also, there have been shifts in economic philosophies with each planetary discovery. So Uranus coincides with the birth of capitalism exemplified in America, and it was associated with Adam Smith's An Inquiry into the Nature of Causes of the Wealth of Nations in 1776, the same year America was born, and that was just 5 years before Uranus was actually discovered. Neptune coincides with the birth of modern socialism. It was the time of Karl Marx's Communist Manifesto in 1848. Yeah, which also coincides with the kind of last Jupiter-Neptune conjunction in Pisces, and we have another new Jupiter-Neptune in Pisces right now, matching in again with the whole communist theme that we see rising again in terms of the World Economic Forum. And then in terms of Pluto, we had the birth of the Plutocrat. Yeah, well, the other one works too. And the rise of Keynesian economics. That was the publication of the General Theory of Employment, Interest and Money by John Maynard Keynes. So you can see how all these planets have influenced new thoughts, aviation, economics, social thought, etc., etc. So obviously the discovery of a new planet is going to herald a whole new era. So they've always been able to, astronomers, not astrologers, to guess that there were other planets because there are kind of perturbations or gravitational deviations caused by the falling planets. So they knew there were irregularities to the orbits and the behavior of Saturn, which indicated that there was another planet beyond Saturn that was exercising some sort of gravitational or torsion force on it. So they've always been able to guess that there is another planet in order to look for it because of the way the existing planets they have discovered act. So okay, so I looked at an article by Bert, I forget his name now, I'm going to have to look it up again. I will put a link for you. He was on with Kate Darley on InfoWars, actually, very interesting. I've just forgotten his name, but anyhow, His name was Bert, and he was talking about his military sources informed him sometime during President Eisenhower's second term that leading scientists had already confirmed the existence of Planet X by using specialized radio telescopes, which is still, in the documents regarding this, are still classified to this day. So in 1972, Pioneer 10 and Voyager 1 and 2 in 1977, which were unmanned space probes, they were designed with the primary purpose being to triangulate the precise location and the trajectory of Planet X. And NASA even mentions this as the purpose of their mission, but they never mentioned it again, and all reference to it was totally deleted. So you can see there's talk of it under Eisenhower, talk of it with NASA, and then it all goes quiet with them. Talk of it in the 70s, should I say, with NASA. Then it all goes quiet. So the New York Times even published a story about these NASA space probes having successfully discovered this mysterious Planet X in 1981. But there was no kind of additional information about this mysterious planet ever again. In 1983, the Washington Post reported that Planet X had been discovered by a newly launched infrared satellite telescope. But again, the story just totally drops out of it, and you never hear about it again. In 1990, the chief astronomer of the United States, called Dr. Robert Harrington of the Naval Observatory, he said that there was certainty about the approach of Planet X into our solar system, and it would cross the very orbit of Earth. And then after his death, he was replaced by a presidential appointee who never mentioned this controversial and alarming subject ever again. So it seems like each new generation of scientists kind of get excited about this planet for some reason, are pressured not to talk about it. And why is it? I mean, it's a taboo, it seems. The powers that should not be kind of don't want to know about this planet or want to keep the information to themselves. Now, the reason may be is this planet does not orbit the sun in a normal fashion, like almost, you could say, in a circular fashion. It's more in an elliptical fashion, means that sometimes it's much further from the sun and by definition the Earth, and at other times it comes much closer. And at times in history, when it has come much closer to the Earth, it's caused cataclysmic events. So, why aren't the powers that be telling people about this planet? Is it because the super rich, at the top of the pyramid, is it because they feel that, a big cataclysm might play into that advantage, but they don't want us to be kind of forewarned, forearmed? Is this the real reason they're building these bunkers and disappearing to places like New Zealand, we hear? Because they know that if Planet X gets close enough to Earth in the coming years, it'll cause, global cataclysmic geological, by definition political as well, and climate changes, and they want to be prepared, but they kind of don't want us to be. So this Bert guy was told about Planet X by a high-ranking source at NASA in 1989, and they said that they were expecting within the next 30 years that Planet X would make a dangerously close approach to Earth. Probably they thought it would be early in the 21st century and not too many decades into the future, but we know it hasn't happened yet, right? So this Planet X is 7 times larger than the Earth, 30 times larger than the Moon, and even if its closest approach was 600 million miles away, which is about in the region of Jupiter, that would still be enough for it to shift the Earth further away, or draw the Earth further away from the Sun, which would wreak havoc in our ecosystem and everything, and it would cause a dramatic increase in volcanoes, tidal waves, meteor showers, earthquakes, the whole lot, as you will know is foretold in many of the scriptures about the return of Jesus in the end times. So a lot of astronomers are saying this Planet X is like a rogue planet, and it's floating freely through space. I don't know under which scientific principles it does this, but they suspect that it could even collide with another planet. Maybe it has in the past. Maybe a collision with this planet is what caused the creation of the Moon, because I don't know if you know, but no one really knows where the Moon comes from. It was suggested that at some stage there was a collision with planet Mars, and that's what wiped out the civilization on Mars and pushed Mars into a much colder orbit. Could be. So anyway, and a lot of people believe that this Planet X, it's pitch black, it's extremely cold, it's almost impossible to see through traditional optical telescopes. So it's a very mysterious planet. Doesn't it have a lot of kind of hidden potentials here? So the Vatican has the most powerful telescope on Earth. I wonder why. They're a religious organization. They're not really astronomical. They're not an observatory, but they have this very technical telescope. And guess what it's called? It's called Lucifer. And it was apparently specifically designed for highly confidential purposes. Those purposes was the discovery of planet X. And it was mysteriously named Lucifer, this telescope, by the Vatican themselves. So I don't know why, the Christian papacy would want to honor the world's most advanced and sophisticated telescope by calling it Lucifer. Maybe because, it's tracking planet X, whose nickname is Lucy, also known as the Destroyer, which is, there's a reference to it in John 10:10. It's also been called the Dragon by Chinese astronomers, and apparently the Malachi Martin, who was a Vatican priest, and he was also kind of a bit of a soothsayer. Many of you may have heard of him. He was disavowed because he was sworn to the secrecy of his sect prior to his death, and he had stated that the primary purpose of this Lucifer telescope was to identify planet X. That was enough to get him excommunicated, right? And so the highest level of Vatican governments do know that it's approaching the Earth, it's getting closer to the Earth, and this will be of utmost importance in the coming years and could actually play a significant role in end times. So I've been planning to do this vlog, and strangely enough, one of my subscribers wrote to me the other day and she said, well, we're having this crazy weather in the United Kingdom. Have you got any astrological interpretation of this? Well, I did have one, because in my prediction for the United Kingdom, I likened 2022 to the year 1963. And if you look back at that, you'll see that in 1963, it was an unprecedented cold winter and there was snow in April. And we've just had snow in April all over the UK. So that was like bang on, that prediction, actually, in terms of working that one out. Now, I just want to get back to the chat about this. So when this rogue planet comes close to the Earth, we to expect highly unusual weather patterns. Summer mixing with winter, unexplained deaths of thousands of land and sea animals, sinkholes appearing out of nowhere, cracks in the ground, random gas pipeline explosions, bridges collapsing, an increase in volcanic eruptions, the Earth's magnetic pole may be shifting. All these could be things that would go on, and we know kind of a lot of things like this are going on already. I mean, I remember not so long ago that bridge collapsing in Italy. And, we do see these strange deaths of birds. Obviously, it's on quite a small scale, but the seasons are definitely shifting, and I don't think it's anything to do with climate change as they would like to interpret it. And it won't just be the Earth that sees these unprecedented effects. The kind of temperature, the orbit, and the luminosity of all the other planets in the solar system will be dramatically altered, and as it turns out, they are already being dramatically altered. For example, the pressure on the surface of Pluto is increased by 300%. Neptune's poles have completely reversed. There have been gigantic storms appearing in Uranus. The size of Saturn's rings have decreased by 20%. Jupiter's atmosphere is undergoing unprecedented change. You know that big eye, the big dark blob on Jupiter, that the red eye, I think some people have said, that's dramatically changing in size. So this is all very, inconsistent, and it doesn't sort of map into the sun's flares and the usual cycles of the sun. Now, what about this planet X in history? Can it be found in history? Well, there apparently are numerous times in both secular and biblical history. For example, the Sumerians, who predate the Egyptians, they are often referred to as the first civilization, and they called this heavenly intruder the planet Nibiru, and they said it was almost like a comet in terms of its motion and appearance. The Hopi Indians called it Kachina. The Bible refers to it as wormwood. You can find that in Revelations 8:11. Just want to mention as an aside, do you know what wormwood is? It's I don't know if I should say it on YouTube. It's that medicine beginning with an I. If you look up where that medicine that a lot of people say is good for COVID, it begins with an I and ends in an N. That comes from wormwood, which is a naturally occurring thing. Do look up at wormwood and that thing that begins with an I. It's kind of interesting. Astronomers have also known it as Nemesis, Tai Chi, Planet X, Planet 7X, etc., etc. Okay, so It's believed that it visits our solar system about every 360 years rather than 3,600 years, which was wrongly predicted by someone called Zechariah Sitchin. Well, I don't know if it could be that frequent, because surely we would be noticing more trials and tribulations. So that seems it couldn't be as often as 360 years. But as they say, it appears to like traverse the solar system. And they sometimes say usually it's very black, and usually it's on the opposite of side of the sun, so we don't really notice it. However, various cultures, Babylonian, Egyptian, Roman, Mayan, Aztec, Iranian, Hebrew, Persian, Hindu, Toltec, and Chinese have all recorded something like that. Okay, even though the NASA record to this day remains secret to the public, allegedly not to cause global panic. So let's talk about previous passages of Planet X. One corresponded to Noah's flood, they say, Sodom and Gomorrah's fire from heaven, the famine of Joseph, Joshua's battle victory with a meteor shower, and the time of Moses and the 10 plagues of Egypt. At the same time as the 10 plagues of Egypt, it's historically recorded that enormous earthquakes were devastating parts of China, and the Minoan civilization near Crete was destroyed by an enormous volcanic eruption, perhaps caused by Planet X's enormous gravitational effects as it comes closer to the Earth, traversing our solar system. So today it's believed by some Christians that Planet X will be God's chosen instrument for bringing about the foretold end times tribulation. As it says, the heavens will be shaken and the seas will roar and men's hearts will melt with fear for what is coming upon the earth. And that is Luke 21:25 to 26. So anyway, guys, that is my interpretation and my discussion about Planet X. I hope that's been informative. I found it incredibly interesting. You know, I was wondering what it would reveal. Pretty thrilled with what I found. A much more extensive article with lots of biblical and historical references will be included in the link below to this guy, Bert. Let me just find out his name. I mean, I really should give the guy some credit here. He was on, Bert Sibrel. Yeah, I got a lot of that information from a guy called Bert Sibrel, and I'll put a link to his extensive article there so that you can get more on it. But anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed it. I do think that this planet is somehow going to be connected to money, because we're going to see the financial collapse. It's going to be connected to energy and resources, because we see a total moving away from traditional energy sources like coal and oil to whatever else it's going to be. It's definitely connected to farming, because we see, you know, what Ice Age Farm was talking about, but also what Gates is pushing, moving away from a sort of agrarian to a more insect-based diet. And that diet, food, agriculture is all very much to do with Taurus. So discovering this planet could totally change everything to do with agriculture, a Taurian thing. Some people say with the Great Reset and the great transformation of human society, we are going to be moving from a carbon-based life form to a silicon-based. That would be transforming the kind of whole nature of our body, which also could be changing our relationship with the earth and detaching us from nature. Those are all sort of Taurian themes, the human body, connection with earth and nature. Obviously, Taurus connected with money, changes in the whole way we deal with money, process money, etc. So there you go. I do feel that at the end of the day, whatever this planet is, it's going to be the ruler of Taurus, and it's going to change human society one way or another. Hope you enjoyed that, guys, and please, if you like, subscribe, give me a thumbs up, and plenty more where this came from. And if you want to support me on Patreon, the links will be below. Thanks so much.